Welcome, everybody. We're about to put on a trailer of the film before we get started. Everyone just kind of sit back and relax and welcome.
How come you don't laugh none? Ain't you got something to make you just smile?
My sister, and I ain't seen her in years.
You know, if you ain't gonna laugh, you need to sell your funny bone.
Oh! I was married to a man I didn't love.
Whatever I say, go.
And he took my sister away from me.
Even if we have to part, you and me, us have one heart.
How come you so nice?
Don't know.
Maybe you too nice.
You seem like trouble.
I come here out of respect. But if there ain't none to get, there sure ain't none to give. There's gonna be some changes made.
Give me something. You got to stand up.
I know my sister somewhere in the world. Someday we're gonna meet again.
Keep your head held high, just like Mom taught us.
It's time I be free from you and then turn into creation.
I'd die before I let that happen.
Good. That's just the going away present I've been needing.
Oh!
loving God.
Greetings and welcome, everyone. My name is Nikichi Taifa, and I'm director of the Reparation Education Project. On December 22nd, the Reparation Education Project hosted a theater buyout that was part of the Win with Black Women endeavor at the Regal Majestic Silver Spring Theater to preview the musical remake of The Color Purple. We featured a pre-trial, excuse me, y'all. As a lawyer, we featured a pre-film discussion with panelists Gwen McKinney, a director of Unerased Black Women Speak, and Aisha Tayemba, licensed mental health therapist, noting that the film illuminated both the psychological effects of abuse as well as the turning of pain into joy as narratives in Black communities that span generations. The commentary included the imagery of Black girls and women in the film and discussing feelings about the movie's portrayal of colorism, domestic violence, resiliency, and sisterly love. The audience expressed great interest in continuing the conversation of healing and repair and making sure to include male voices as well. So that's what we're doing here today. We're calling this The Color Purple. The conversation continues. And before I introduce our esteemed moderator for this discussion, we want to highlight several what we call principles of engagement. And we're going to put those on the screen right now if we're able to get that pulled up, because we want to ensure that our conversation is very beautiful as well as disciplined and the like. So our principles of engagement are to respect each other in language and action, listen with an open mind, criticize the problem, not the person, ask to clear up unclarity, assume the best intent of others, and to contribute out of love. And these are principles of engagement. Thank you so very much for putting that on the screen that I use for all of my events and endeavors. So at this point, I'm going to bring up the moderator. And if your view is on speaker view, then you'll see the speakers who are speaking. If it's on gallery view, you'll see everybody Brady Bunch style. I've highlighted our moderator for this continued conversation, which is my dear friend and colleague, attorney Billi Wilkerson, holistic repair advocate and managing director of the Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center at Howard University School of Law. And I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to remove my pen and turn it over to Billi Wilkerson right now, who will continue with the program. How you doing, Billi?
Good. Thank you so much, Nikishi. The Color Purple has so much complexity and so much history and culture and controversy that it's never going to be enough time to be able to have the conversation. So I hope that we continue after this moment, but I know that this is a continuation of the conversation that happened after the buyout show. So some of the things that I wanted to just mention is that there was a book by Alice Walker, and a lot of people read the book. And then there was the movie in 1985, and there's a lot of people, like that was 11 nominations for Oscars, groundbreaking historically, and a lot of that. And then there was the musical that played on Broadway for a period of time. And then there was the musical adaptation, which is the movie that we all just saw. And so because I know that different people are coming in from different perspectives, sometimes when you say The Color Purple, you can be talking about a lot of different things. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that this conversation is all inclusive. We're talking about the sub issues that were outlined and named in the book, like domestic violence, like colorism, like the trauma that Black women have experienced, the healing opportunities that are created. We're going to go, and I'm just going to go very quickly over what we're hoping to do during this very short period of time, which is introductions. I'm going to introduce both of our panelists. I'm going to give a very quick historical kind of moment when we start the actual discussion part. And we're going to have lay out the context of the movie in terms of reparations, because it was sponsored clearly by the Reparations Education Project, which if you guys are less familiar with it, I think that there's a bunch of people who joined and this is your first time being involved in Nkechi's project. It's a wonderful resource. And then what we're also going to do is there's a lovely Howard University student named Juliana Boy, who's on the call, who's going to be collecting the resources that we gather during this call so that we can reshare them when we share. So so if there are issues that are raised, if there are trigger moments that come up, if there are comments that are that raise an opportunity to communicate or a pain that you've experienced, it's going to be helpful to put those comments into the chat. If there is a resource that you know would be helpful for each other, this is a healing opportunity. So I'd like for folks to just use the chat as a mechanism for being able to collect those thoughts so that at the end of the conversation, we'll be able to have a more quality discussion with our Q&A session. So it's going to be this short period of introductions, then a discussion with a couple of questions, and then a Q&A session where we hope that you guys get to be really involved in that conversation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. And I'm beginning with Gwen McKinney. And please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Unmute. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining. And special thanks to my longtime sister friend, Nkechi Taifa, for convening this event. I've known Nkechi almost as long as The Color Purple has been around, or actually around that time, in the 80s. So I want to say that the important thing about this film is that it has endured for 40 plus years, from the book to this current iteration with the film. 40 years, that's 2 generations. And there are people who actually joined us at the Silver Spring Theater who were not even born when Alice Walker penned the book. But the one thing that I think is really important is that the story is enduring. The storyline, for all of its elements and all of the twists, the turns, and the drama, the story is one that could fit in any era or period of our existence as African people in the United States. And so I think it's really appropriate that Nkechi, who is the maestro for reparations, would bring this conversation to the table. I want to just quickly say that one of the things that I'm looking at in our discussion, and that I really was able to pull out of the film, the most recent film, was generational trauma that we as Black people have endured over the years, the decades, the centuries. and also exquisitely the generational joy. And the reason why this is so important, it speaks to how we as a people have survived. And a brilliant scholar, educator, author, Tracy Lewis Gidget, if you all are not familiar with Black Joy, stories of resistance, resilience, and restoration, I urge you to get the book. It's a gem, and it's an important statement on us as a people. One of the things that Tracy, and I should introduce I didn't introduce myself, did I? That I am the campaign director and creator of an organization called Unerased Black Women Speak. I should have started out with that. And Unerased Black Women Speaks shapes narrative and creates content for, by, and about Black women unapologetically. So during the Christmas holiday season, I sat down with a conversation with Tracy, and I wanted her to leave us with something. What do we carry from the holiday into the new year about joy? And the thing that she said so prophetically is that joy is our birthright. And Brother Dow has that video, a little clip of our conversation with Tracy. Let's look at it.
Well, I would say to my family, to my people, to anybody who's watching this, that joy is your birthright. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to do something like, to get it. You don't have to. Joy is yours to have. And in the midst of great chaos, great rage, great sorrow, it is necessary and needed for you to create joy, amplify joy in your life. And you can do that in the smallest and in the biggest ways. And there's something to be said about our great grandmothers who said, "This joy I have, the world didn't give it and the world can't take it away." Because what it's saying is that it is the undercurrent. You can have joy even when you're not happy. And people often don't understand what I mean by that. But what I mean is that, happiness is often temporary and dependent on the moment. I'm happy because I get to go here. I'm happy because, I got this thing or whatever. But joy is the undercurrent that stays with you even when things may not be going according to plan. Or as you mentioned, the year turns over and there's still war and there's still hurt and there's still pain in the world and pain in our individual lives. Joy can still be present in the midst of that. And your work, your daily healing work will be to find it, to bring it up to the surface so that you don't go off the deep end, right?
Thanks for that. That was so prophetic. Sometimes someone says something better than you could ever say it. So let them say it. That's the best way, rather than to paraphrase. And the reason why I wanted to tee up the conversation with that was because we're going to be talking about, there were some really painful moments in the film. And even though it was a musical and there was lots of color and dance and it was a lot of fanfare, there was also a lot of hurt and trauma and the need for healing. And I think that we'll talk more about that, and you all probably have some perspective on that yourselves. But I wanted to set this up, this meaning our conversation together, for us to keep our eyes on the reality that through trauma, through pain and in the healing process, what we do is lift up joy. Our Celie character, even with all that she dealt with, all of the abuse and denial, she was a joyous soul. And it was a celebration of life. And sometimes, as Tracy Gidget Lewis says, you can experience joy in very big ways and very small ways as part of the lived daily experience. So I have one more video which Unerased created because we want to corner this idea of Black women's joy, our joy, and it comes in so many different forms. And Brother Jal's going to tee up that video, Our Joy, so you all can look and see, and it's simple.
Our joy, it's everywhere we are. Low tech and high touch. A smile, a joke, a belly laugh. Warm sunshine, magical sunsets, rainbows in the storm. A shopping spree, a summer picnic, a girl's getaway, a friend's play date, a poem, a book, a prayer. Quiet space from a clamoring day. A Sunday brunch, a champagne toast, a decadent dessert. Soothing, breathing, stretching, or being still. A fast jig, a long walk, a slow dance. Joy is ours. Joy is us. Let's claim it, then own it.
And thank you so much, Gwen. We're going to pivot over now to Kevin Mwata Sankara. If you wanted to go ahead and give a brief introduction and talk a little bit about what your thoughts are in terms of.
Thank you so much, Sister Billi, for that. Thank you for the invitation to be a part of this Baba Yah. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and it is indeed a pleasure and honor to see so much, so many family members. My wife is also joining. My sisters joined in, and my other wives and sisters here that we've been together in this process of liberating African people for a number of years. Mom and Keach and I met each other some time ago around the project around of reparations and Cobra and some other things. So and then our children with the Nation House together. So it's just great to be a part of this conversation. I want to make sure that I honor the process. Thank you so much, Sister Gwen McKinney, for sharing Unerased. That was two powerful videos. And I like the idea of joy, right? My grandmother did say, this joy that I have, the word that give it to me, the word that they take it away. And it's always about the issue of the joy, something that's deep within us, that it does not come from what's happening, because happiness is about what's happening right now. But joy is an internal job, an internal process. And so one can have joy in the midst of things that don't seem to be exciting, because the joy says that though I may have a moment right now, it only endures for a moment, and then I can ascend, I will transcend out of this particular moment. That's what our ancients told us with the Sar Set conversation, that we will rise out of this moment. And so I think that it's imperative for us to recognize the dynamics that's in the film. The work that we've been doing over the years ties in very well with this idea of reparations and repair, because the word reparations means to repair. How do we restore the divine African spirit back to its original form, right? We cannot utilize European nomenclature, European structures to deal with the repairing of who we are at our very core. That is a part of the joy, is a part of who we are. The idea of understanding that we have to ground the conversation about who we are in the context of not simply in the pain, the traumatic moment, but who and what is going through the trauma has to be elevated, because that's the thing that is moving and traversing through that. So as the past president of the Black Psychologists and currently serving as the president of the World Mental Health Coalition, as well as Black Mental Health Matters, we're engaging in this global conversation about what does it mean as an African people to be, to become, and more importantly, to be able to express ourselves in our full, authentic selves. And so this is why I'm excited to be a part of this conversation. I want to make sure that we said to do the introduction in Sister Billi. So I'm not going to belabor the moment. I just simply wanted to say that it is just it is a joy to be here. We have developed a model for healing. Our people talk about the issue of the Ubuntu model based on the work that we did in South Africa. We suggest that we cannot suffer from post-traumatic anything, because the word post means to have gone through it. And so if it's a perpetually ongoing process, then it can never be post until we get through it. So therefore, I call it persistent enslavement, systemic trauma. It's something that is going on as a pest and not a post phenomenon. And so the film, the musical, as well as the original, the earlier film, talks about the pain that we've had to endure, the process of moving through it, how we sustain ourselves in the context of what we have encountered, that the events don't define us, that we define ourselves. And so we find inside of the various characters, what does it mean to be? The song, the dance, the authentic expression of humanity, to be able to love in spite of that which is despising you, right? That's a powerful testimony to the African spirit and reality. So that's the work that we've been engaged in. We enjoy doing this work. That is, how do we restore ourselves back to our original greatness and not define ourselves in the context of the trauma that we've encountered, because we're bigger than the event. And that's why reparations is so important. How do we repair? How do we move back to our original greatness? So I just want to just simply just say thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this conversation, and that I'm excited about what we will uncover as we go through this afternoon. Sister Billi, I turn it back over to you.
Absolutely. No, I think that what we're going to do is I'm going to go over the historical context of the film. And I'm going to talk about how the film the opening scene was placed in 1909. And then it went through almost 1949, depending on who talks about it. But then after that, I think that it will be really good to invite the audience into our conversation. And so if you as audience members have some things that you want to make sure that we talk about, if you can go ahead and start engaging the chat and putting some of the questions that you have in the chat, then when we do the Q&A segment, we'll be able to just go directly into the questions that you're saying and talk to you directly. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pull up let's see. And I'm going to pull up a little infographic that I created for talking about the historical context of the movie. And so the opening scene takes place when Nettie and Celie are children. They're 13 and 14 years old. And in the original movie, there's a scene where Nettie's having her newborn child taken through the snow. And in the modern version, the musical adaptation, there's a rain scene that they talk about. But Big Mister, who was Harpo's grandfather, became a landowner in Georgia during the time of emancipation. Alice Walker, in talking about the writing of the book, talks about how she used to listen to the stories of her grandparents and talking about what had happened with them and their lives and their stories. And so that's where she got a lot of her ideas for The Color Purple itself. But Big Mister was Harpo's grandfather. He was a landowner in Georgia at the time of emancipation, so during the late 1800s. The traditions that were ingrained from slavery carried over, including incest and selling children. Mothers and fathers were not in what we would consider traditional roles in the same way during our enslavement. And some of those traditions were actually picked up. And I think that the film, the book, and the musical adaptations were able to touch on the trauma of that experience from slavery. And that's where we come into Adam and Olivia. The other period of time that I kind of wanted to highlight was 1914 to 1918, which was World War I. The other thing that we don't even consider, I took my 96-year-old grandmother with me to go and see the film. After I'd seen it the first time, I went and took my grandmother, and she was the first person. She was born in 1927. She was the first family in their community to get electricity. And so I think the film did a pretty good job of depicting like the time period. There was a lot of true time period elements of it, with buggies and even the changing from automobiles and the access of automobiles that kind of changed during the course of the movie. But domestic violence, child abuse, death, murder were actually differently positioned during that period of time. And I just wanted to point out that The Birth of a Nation was the #1 movie in 1915. Lynchings and violence in the United States was extremely prevalent. And then the next part that I wanted to highlight, just in terms of historical context, was the period of World War II from 1939 to 1945. There was a scene in the film where the women were wearing pants. Celie had gotten her store, which was her mother had, and her father, she had inherited it after Nettie came home, and all of the women were kind of were in the position to run the stores. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that that was a period of time where women were running the stores, running the communities, because a lot of men were off at war. And that's an image from Rosie the Riveter. And then the other piece that I wanted to highlight was the period of that ended close to 1945. And then it was depicted in different ways in the film when Celie was reading the letters from Nettie talking about how they were moved from one camp to another camp in Africa and decolonization. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the historical context and give you a little bit of pieces of information to think about as you come up with the questions that you have for our group of panelists, and come up with the pieces of conversation that you want to continue to have in this conversation. Gwen and Mwata or Nikichi, do you guys have any immediate comments?
Let me just chime in real quick. And let me just pin myself. I'm glad you gave that historical overview because it didn't even dawn on me when I watched the film that Mr. was a landowner or whatever. And then you wonder, what was it other than his own father that shaped him into the person that he was? What type of abuse did he go through? What type of trauma did a Black man during that period of time go through that will cause them to act in the way in which he acted? Could he do what, oh God, I forgot her name, what Oprah's role and Danielle's role is? What was her name? Y'all?
Sophia.
What Sophia did and strike out at the white woman, or would he have been just lynched right there on the spot? So who does he take it out with? Or those who are closest to him that don't necessarily have the power to do what the white man or the white woman was doing. So I just wanted to raise that part of the context that it's there and it's underlying there, but it's not really brought out in the film.
And Nkechi, I'm so glad that you raised that. And thank you, Billi, for that historical context. Because a lot of times when we go to a movie, even when it's a period movie, because it's Hollywood, and as much as we can say we love The Color Purple, it was a production of Hollywood. And that means that they are telling a story that's going to sell at the box office. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the historical context that you presented is going to be evident. The thing that you talked about during that period, and I guess from, 1918 to 1922, that was the series of Red Summers and the Tulsa and when we think about what was going on during that period with Black people, it wasn't just the lynching. Our communities that were attempting to thrive were literally burned down and destroyed. And that was something that was happening during that period. So I think your context is a very powerful seed for us to kind of weave into our understanding of the film. And what Nkechi says about the brothers, how did you don't see the monsters who created them, who engendered the kind of violence and abuse. The only monster you saw, as you mentioned with Sophia, was the white woman. And, so I'll stop there because you've opened up a little bit. That historical context has opened up a Pandora's box of conversation. Thank you very much for that.
I agree. That piece to historically contextualize the conversation, Billi was straight. I mean, right on point. Even thinking about the 24th Regiment in Houston, the Houston area, these men struck out against the U.S. government because they were being oppressed by the government. And so there's a whole narrative that's not even told about how Black men were actually resisting oppression. But the idea of being able to understand that when we discuss the dynamics of Black relationships in the U.S., we have to be able to understand the third element in the room, which is always this issue of racism and oppression and how we define ourselves in the context of that. And so too often we measure the discourse of how we get along as Black men and women in response to just us, but not understanding that there are other dynamics in place. So Mama Nkechi, you brought it very well. Like, what were people trying to do? How are they enduring the trauma, the pain? How was one able to own land? How did they own land? How people were losing land that they were so-called owning, right? All of these things are moments of pain, of trauma. And the reason why I say that we think beyond the pain because of the trauma, because if we continue to define ourselves by the experiences, we miss out on the dynamics of the individual to be able to try to move on. And sometimes we cope in ways that are very unhealthy. And that's part of what comes out in the film, that we begin to oppress one another. We begin to cathartic release on one another. And that's a hurtful part of what happens, because as you said, hurt people. The issue is who is causing the hurt. Too often we try to measure Black relationships around the issue. It's like trying to ask the water that's boiling, why are there bubbles coming up, right? The bubbles are coming up because there's heat in the pot. What is the heat that is causing what's happening to us? And so part of that deals with as you mentioned, Sister McKinney, the monsters, the inhumane beings, those that can rape, that can lynch, that can castrate, that can castigate a population. That's heavy. And so we have countless narratives of people existing in the context of, as you said, about the Red Summer, 1919, in the context of killing Black folks as a blood sport. It's coming right on the heels of so-called Emancipation Proclamation, when it was, what do we do with these Negroes that we've freed? And Mama McKinney can clearly talk about how the penal system, slavery by another name, increased at the time of the
Well, I would say to
release
my
of
family,
so-called
to my
enslaved
people,
Africans, but still
to anybody
whites
who's
could
watching this, that
own
joy
as
is your birthright.
as what it calls
You don't have
apprentices
to earn it.
of Black folks.
You don't
So many
have
things
to,
that happened. So people were surviving
do something
under the context
to
of
get
constant
it. You don't have
turmoil,
to. Joy is yours
duress,
to have.
and trying to figure out
And in
how
the
to
midst
be
of great
inside of
chaos,
that. And so,
great rage,
patterns were
great
disrupted as
sorrow,
relates to family patterns. However, there
it
was
is
always
necessary and
central
needed
to our existence
for you
the notion of
to
family, even though there were things that
create
came
joy,
out that were
amplify joy
sick,
in your life.
right? The idea of
And
incest and other
you
things.
can do that
We
in
still
the
understood that
smallest
if we're going to
and the
survive,
biggest ways.
we have to ground ourselves in family.
And
that
there's
never
something
left,
to
and
be
that's
said
powerful
about our great
to recognize. So I'll pause
this
there.
joy I have, the world
I get excited.
the
So
world
yes,
can't take it
I'll
away.
stop
So the
there.
questions are
Because what
starting
it's
to
saying
roll
is
in.
that it is the
And so we're
undercurrent. You
excited
can
about
have
that.
joy
It's actually
even when you're
perfect
not
timing. We
happy.
said that around 7:45 we
And
wanted to
people
start with questions.
often don't understand what I
There's a
mean by
brother
that, but
named
what I mean
Kennard
is that,
Cherry who
happiness
is
is
joining the
often
conversation,
temporary and
and
dependent on
he
the
made a
moment.
comment
I'm happy
that
because I get to go here. I'm happy because,
the trauma
I got
of
this thing
Mr.
or
was
whatever. But
apparent,
joy is the undercurrent that
and
stays with
that
you
what he
even
did was
when things
what he
may
saw
not
to
be
do,
going according to plan, or as
and
you
that the
mentioned, the
overshadowing
year turns
of
over and there's
the
still war, and there's
vestiges of
still
slavery
hurt, and there's still pain in the world,
were
and pain in our
were
individual
what he was
lives.
expressing,
And,
and
joy
that,
can still be
and he also
present
made
in
a
the
comment
midst of that.
about
And your work, your
that being
daily
a
healing
time
work
period where
will
women were
be to
still being
find
viewed
it,
as
to
property
bring it up to
and
the
not
surface,
fully viewed
so
as
that you don't go off the
human
deep end, right?
in the ways that we view ourselves now, unapologetically.
Do you want me to bring him up?
Yeah,
Did you want me to bring
that
that?
would be great.
I'm here.
Kennard, can you speak a little
Nard
bit to
is
that?
there. He's there. We can see him.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the movie, first of all, I'm just honored to be in the room. It's just so much. This is a great conversation, and to the point, in regard to Mr., like I said, his trauma was apparent. Even myself, I came up in a household with domestic violence in my earlier years, up to maybe the age of 6, and I noticed some things then with my own parents. And Mr. is a thing where he's basically doing what he saw. It's like this is how you get your woman to obey or do what he says, that type of thing, and trying to assert who he was, but not realizing just being who he was as a man was enough. He didn't have to do all those things, in my opinion. However, in that time, it was a lot of that stemmed from slavery and things that maybe his father saw and went through as well. And his father translated down through the years in regard to how to rear children and what needed to happen, the whippings and all those things, and just do as I say type of thing. And it was level of dysfunction there that caused a lot of damage. And in regard to women, it's a thing where not seeing women as equals. I was just having a conversation with my wife about because we have 5 daughters. It's a thing of I want them to be able to shine, and their shine and my wife's shine and women being able to shine doesn't take away ours as men. And so I think that's one of the things where, in the context of that movie, I've noticed that there's a lot of abuse that may have definitely went on, especially psychological. When that scene where he was sitting on the porch with his dad, he was like, "You're gonna get this under control. You can control her," that type of thing. Controlling is an illusion, especially when you're dealing with people.
Thank you. There was an author, a writer, that said that the movie puts our pain under a microscope, and it also highlights our strength and resilience, even under the worst of circumstances. That was a writer named Melissa Kimball. But I'm going to read a couple of the questions that are in the chat, and I'm going to invite both Gwen and Mwata to kind of begin to make commentary on it. What would you say? I'm going to read there's 4 questions that are currently posed. What would you say to men who comment that the movie was harmful to the image of Black men? Could we talk about how some of the treatment and aggression of the Black during that time was created from trauma, violence, killings that they had experienced? a comment that white supremacy is very harmful to all involved, and male and female African descendants have been traumatized in America. How do we respond to those who compare and contrast the experience of men and women? Which one of you wanted to tackle any or all of those questions?
I'll let Brother Mwata come out the gate with it, and I'll follow suit.
All right. Thank you, Sister McKinney. Billi, for the questions, everyone. I mean, it's a powerful piece, right? To understand that, as Kennard mentioned, the idea of pain and men and male identity defined in the context of whiteness, right? White male identity, and to understand that even in that time period, if you go back and look at the movies of that time period, you will find that white men just slap women. So the idea of commodification of women was simply run rampant, but it wasn't the same kind of phenomena. If we do our real research about Black family development, that it was for white men. But we want to be clear that Black male identity was shaped, influenced by, informed by some dynamics of trauma. And so we see it where this Black man is defining himself by saying, are you going to get that under control? The idea of control, but not so much always about the control of the woman from a white male perspective. The issue is that in life, I have so much stuff that I cannot control. I cannot control the dynamics of racism. I cannot control my children being sold away. I cannot control how I even planted my seed, because I did having breeder plantations. I cannot control so much over the years. So there has to be something in my life I can control. So the control issue was different from white male control. The control issue was from this idea that there's so many things outside of this space that I can't control. So I have to be able to have some sense of manhood. Now, that's not justifying it. I'm not justifying it at all. I'm simply saying that it's a very different understanding that we have to apply. We cannot utilize European discourse to describe an African phenomenon. Otherwise, we will miss out on what's taking place. So the trauma then does create this condition of how we define ourselves. But also inside of that was still this idea of, how do I define family? How do I provide for? How do I extend? Right? How do I make things make sense in the context of things that are not making sense? And so we have to talk about treatment and healing. I want to get there because when we see the vestiges of the trauma coming out, we see also the elements of healing that have to take place. That idea of, if there is this desire for control, how do we demonstrate this in a way that is healthy for all? How do I maintain my maleness in the context of this? How do I maintain my masculinity? How do I maintain my importance? I mean, even on the piece that you share with us, Sister Gwen, you showed women and girls' night, traveling or what have you, right? A girls' trip, that kind of thing. Typically, that's not a man's conversation. Maybe some fellow stuff, but I cannot say to Kennard, let's go to the bathroom together, right? You are women, you can do that because there's something distinct about that. My point is that because Kennard and I would have a conversation about what we're doing and how we compete and compare with one another. So even in our maleness, we have to figure out what is it that you're doing. So we can do a lot of things together. We can play ball together. We can fix cars together. We can do a lot of things together. We do together. Whereas women find a way to be together. So sometimes we want to define or redefine the idea of what it means to be maleness and especially Black manhood in the context of what it means to be a woman, and that it's not going to work, right? And so we have to honor the fact that there are things that we have to do as both men and women. There were times we would think, I got started, I promise I'll stop here, that the women would talk in the house, my grandmother and her daughters, which means my mother and my aunts, and there would be a clear of the throat, which means that it's time for me, and even in my boyhood, to leave, because now this is a woman's conversation, right? And so I still would hear stuff. So sometimes I would get under the table before they got started. So I knew it was about to go down, right? And so the point was that there are certain things that happens within these gender-specific areas. And so we have to do a better job as Black men of not transmitting the elements of trauma that we have that's been passed on to us. But as Kennard is suggesting to others, we have to be able to pass on messages of what it means to be a man in the context of our own Africanness.
Absolutely.
Not trying to be a caricature of white men, but our own identity. What does it mean to provide? And so we know research study shows us this, that when Black men become extended fathers for children, they take care of the children that they become extended fathers to as if they were their own, which is not what the same thing happens for white men, which means then that we see family very different. We see children very differently. How do we honor that? And so there's so much more to the healing, but I'll put a pin in it right there.
Well, I'm telling you, bro, you done laid so much stuff out there. I can't really answer it all, but there are 2 points I want to make. I think that when you talk about this model of manhood, and during that era, prior to and even today, white male patriarchy is not something that should even attempted to be replicated or imitated by Black men. Because white male patriarchy has no room for Black men. It is built on white supremacy, and it is built on not just the land ownership and ownership of the women, etc., but the whole notion that white men dominate everybody. And so where does that leave the brothers? If they are trying to imitate them, it does not work. The other thing that I wanted to say, so I so appreciate what you're talking about, the model for manhood and family and strength for Black men, it must be different. And this is why so many Black men are wounded, because they're trying to figure out how to measure up to the patriarchy, which is just not for us. It never was and never will be. So that's one thing. But then the second thing, I wanted to go back to the film, Billi. And there were a number of very strong women, including Celie, Shug, and Sophia. There was a superpower that Shug had, Shug Avery, and it wasn't just her sexuality. It was this kind of clarity about who she was. Sophia, who took on the white system. The one thing I appreciated in this film that was not so much the case in 1985, for those of you who remember when I think Oprah played Sophia, right? And she was beaten and broken. In this iteration, Sophia, Danielle, while they tried to break her, her resilience, she rose. And she still had that kind of just the demand to be her own person. Now, if that threatens brothers, now I'm not even talking about all of the rape and things like that, but I'm just talking about the strength of Black women. That, I think, was captured so beautifully in the film, and I embrace that. So I just wanted to speak to that when we're talking, and Kennard kind of laid it out, I think, really well. So I'll stop there.
There are several new comments in the chat, and we're approaching the 8 o'clock hour. So there's a couple of things that are happening. Resources are being sent to Juliana as we raise different issues. We're naming organizations and resources that are available for support. If you have an organization that has a support group, there's an Ubuntu Decolonizing Your Mind 12-step program. There's the Lions Roar program that out of the It Takes a Village collaborative. There are several different initiatives that have been started. There's different reparations efforts that have been funded to be able to be a resource for the community and for community members if there are issues that are being triggered as we're having these conversations. Your comments are welcome. Jennifer, thank you so much for your comment. Ernest, thank you for your comment. Kabibi, thank you again for your comment. Dr. Akmal said that we also have to deal with the psychological damage that that Black me injured due to being enslaved. And that was the only way he felt he could release the trauma. There was no mental health care at that time. Kabibi made the comment. Oh no, I actually read that comment. I made a comment that I heard people say as I was preparing for this and inviting people to the conversation, that there was a consistent conversation about the music, the dancing, the singing, the joyful displays of a traumatic topic, and the idea of a musical being portrayed about such a heavy topic. And I actually Googled some of the top 10 musicals that dealt with heavy topics. There was Rent that dealt with the topic of AIDS and people dying in the community. There was Les Miserables that dealt with the death and poverty in France in the 19th century. There's stories about gentrification and commodification, and communities use musicals to tell their stories without question. And the conversation that we were having back in the 80s, I remember, was about how representation was so important because there was only this one movie that had a full cast of Black faces, where now we have whole television networks with multiple TV shows that can tell multiple stories. And so there is a space, I think, for a spectrum of conversations. And one of the fun conversations that kind of got me involved in this project in the first place that Nikichi and I were having was about the idea of a prequel. And so there's a movie, there's a sequel, and then there's the prequel. The prequel is the story that tells the story before the story. And so the imagination that we were having and talking about was, what if we told a prequel that talked about the backstory of Big Mister, and developed more fully the male characters in Alice Walker's novel, based on kind of the epic moment that The Color Purple is, not necessarily what Alice was working on portraying, but what it means to our community and how a conversation like that could contribute to repair. And the reason why I mentioned all of those things is because there's a dynamic that gets set up where we are essentially pitted against each other. If one of us is going to survive, then the other of us must be demonized, must be made to be the villain. If Black men are going to be uplifted, then the Black woman has to be, like an unpleasant force that pushes it forward. And if Black women are going to be harmed and experience trauma, then it must be the fault of Black men. And so that kind of setup for failure is part of the story around supremacy and how it keeps us from being able to heal. And so the conversation around repair is really about identifying the historical harm, identifying the current impact of that harm, and then creating opportunities for repair or opening up the flow of the existing opportunities for us to be able to have these beautiful conversations. And Akichi, I'm so grateful to you for opening up the space for that. I had to just make sure I got all my little check boxes off. But yeah, I just wanted to, no, he just went off camera. But Gwen, I'm going to pivot back to you, and Mwata, I'm going to go back to you guys to make some additional comments.
Well, the hour is starting to get late, so I don't want to consume too much time, except to say thank you for all of you for joining us in this conversation, for the richness, the thoughtfulness, for the militancy and the truth that was told today, this evening. So I just want to say how much I appreciate it. And what you brought, I see in the chat, one person said, this was better than the movie in terms of the insight. Maybe it wasn't said like that, but that was the upshot. And I agree. So thank you all for such a powerful presentation.
Thank you. I want to be honest about something. I would not have gone to see this this film at this time if my wife did make the suggestion to go see it, because I had seen the first one and I felt like it was a lot of Black male bashing, and I didn't like that. I again, the narratives what they were as a young Black man at that time, I couldn't find anything that made me feel okay about being a man. I even had a situation where these weren't clients I was consulting with this couple. They actually broke up because of The Color Purple, and it wasn't because they watched the film together. The issue was this was years after the film had taken place. But what had happened was that the female said that she wanted to iron his clothes, and he got upset with her and said, "You wouldn't iron my clothes," and so they fell out. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It was more to it than that. Say, well, what happened? He said, I saw The Color Purple. I didn't want to be a mister. So I said that anytime I have a woman in my life, she would not have to iron for me. That's what he said. She had said that I grew up in a household full of women and there were no men around. And I said, the reason why there's no men around, because they don't know how to treat a man. So when I get to men, I'm going to know how to treat a man by ironing his clothes. And so that became the breakup, right? So it's this idea of, even sometimes we can redefine ourselves, trying to define ourselves away from trauma and still cause pain because we haven't dealt with the underlying phenomenon. And so I want to thank my wife for making the suggestion that I go see the film. I am glad I saw this new iteration for a variety of reasons. And one of them was how they were able to recast Mr. to be a part of the healing and repair in the context of family, right? So that was a nice shift. Some other shifts that took place, and I think that's so important. It's so important to be able to understand. I love the idea of the prequel of Billi and Mama in Kichi, because it says, what is the story behind the story? What happens to create the conditions that we find? My mother says all the time, says, I said that, but what did you say before I said what I said? Like, what happened that made that come about? And so we have to understand that, as was mentioned, there was no mental health treatment. We still are working on what it look like. The Ubuntu circles are out there, and other things are coming about. We're still trying to figure out what it is, and we have to recognize this, that the power of the invincible African spirit has never been broken, because it never was created by that which is trying to break it. That is that the oppressor has never broken it. Yes, we've had some brokenness, right? But the issue of being broken has never been fully completed. And so the film also gives us that insight, that even though there are things that happen, we can recast ourselves. And so therapy is to the spirit or soul what a cast is to a broken arm. Therapy provides the structure for the healing to take place. It does not cause the healing to take place. When we talk about the issue of mental health and treatment and therapy, it has to be come from the place of understanding what was the brokenness prior to the broken event taking place. That's why the reparation conversation is so important. What was the harm? What's the impact of it? Now the issue is, how do we restore it? We have to understand that Before it was broken, it existed in this form. How do we know it existed in this form? Because we see messages of that also taking place. Classic example, and I'm done. Black people have family reunions, not white folks, because we want to make sure that people know who's tied to who. We taught them how to have a family reunion. What does that mean? That family has always meant something. Even in the midst of all of the chaos and turmoil, it's always meant something. That's how we begin to talk about the healing and repair. We do a dance. Dance at every family reunion. It's a lion dance where we dance. We do lion dances. Everybody does it. Why do we know the lion dance? Because if we understand the Bantu Congo concept of how we prepay to the left, to the right, to the forward, to back, the down, the up, we go to 7 directions. That they say that in the Bantu Congo concept that we are a trifold being, that we are mama and them, we are those yet to be born, and we're right here, and we're radiated in 7 distinct directions. In the context of even in family and family reunions, we move in those 7 directions, meaning that we know that we move into the left, the right, we're talking about enemies, our friends, we're talking about family, we're talking about different down to the spirit, and we ascend into our greatest, highest possibility. The point is that that's how we know we have who we are. We have to bring that back to the forefront and stop consistently talking about bringing about madness and the ill issues that are happening. The issue is that who are you? And my grandmother would say this: if you don't know, you got to be who you is, not who you ain't. Because try to be who you ain't gonna be nobody. So we have to always be who we are at our core.
And Gwen, you got the last comment to close us out here from the panel.
I have the last comment. Well, I don't want to be between the folks leaving for dinner or whatever it is. I just want to say thank you very much to my sister Nkichi for really pulling this together. And I think we all gained some new insights from this conversation. Thank you to everyone again. I'm through.
Billi, do you, I want to do a closing, but Billi, do you, I know you have someone collecting resources. I don't know if you want to say anything more in terms of the comments, but you know, this has been a really rich conversation, but go on, Billi, take it away.
Well, I mean, Juliana, are you still on the call? If you are, you can just read off the resources that you collected so far. And I think that the folks who were able to send that out is very helpful. I think that the comment in terms of the hurt and the pain and referring to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and her work is an incredibly helpful resource as well. But what we can do, Nkichi, is send out those links along with it when we share the video or when you make the video available for folk. Is that something that's possible?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And let me also just mention, if I may, go on, Gwen. Yes, indeed.
I'm sorry. I should give my folks will kill me. I should give a public service announcement. Please visit, and I don't have the link, but please visit Unerased, BWS.com. Tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, we are launching we call it Recorded Live on Imagining 2024 and Beyond with Afrofuturism. And we pay tribute to Octavia Butler and to sisters who have looked to the future, not just in art and literature, but in a whole range of areas, to lift up and to celebrate a space where it's actually the antithesis of enslavement. Afrofuturism is our liberation in a world that is Black-centered. So I want to invite you all to check it out tomorrow, 7 o'clock on YouTube. If you go to uneраsedbws.com, you can get to our YouTube page or our Facebook page. Thank you very much.
So I just want to say, Gwen, in particular, thank you for Unerased Black Women Speak. I was honored to be one of the Unerased Black women that you highlighted, and it's done a whole lot for my visibility, and I really appreciate that. I want to make sure that everyone knows that not only are you the director of Unerased, Black Women Speak. You're also the founder of McKinney and Associates. You're a long distance runner. Dr. Kevin Washington, Brother Mwata. I want to make sure everybody knows that you are an African-centered psychologist, founder, and CEO of Nyansapo Empowerment Works, unlimited counseling consultation. I mean, we really have the stars here, and we really appreciate you giving up your time. Billi, attorney Billi Wilkerson, my heart just goes out to you, my sister, because, we talk about different generations, and I know I look like I'm a millennial and all like that, but I'm in the way part of the baby boomer generation. And you're not you're a millennial. You're at the upper end of the millennial, right? But but you're a grandma also. Yeah. So I mean, it's important.
Gen X is what I'm
Gen
called.
X, okay, one of those things. But I'm gonna let you say the closing word. But I just want to say that Reparation Education Project was very honored to host this. We believe very much in the integration of arts and culture into the politics and political struggles that we have, and part of that is Reparation Education Project has just started a new campaign headed by Nana Malaya, who's on the call as well, called Artists and Athletes for Reparations. And be on the lookout. Next a month, we're going to be featuring another film, American Fiction. We're going to have panelists, Dr. Greg Carr and Brother Tony Browder. And we might have a drop in from one of the stars of the film. I'm not quite sure. She said she's going to try, but she's not sure. Erica Alexander, we shall see. But that film was nominated for an Oscar with Jeffrey Wright. So stay tuned to Reparation Education Project and everything reparations, because it is all interconnected. It's all about repair. It's all about healing. It's all about bringing our family together. And with that, Billi, let me turn it over to you to close.
Well, thank you all. That's it. That's all I have to say. I'm just so grateful and so appreciative, and I'm happy to end on time. I appreciate y'all.
And we will have the video of this up on YouTube. We'll let you all know. Peace and blessings. I'm going to leave it open for one moment so I can take a look at the chat, but we're officially ending. Baba Yao, if you want to put on that jazzy soul music you had before, I think that would be really nice. Thank you, Brother Dr. Mwata, my dear sister Gwen McKinney, and of course, Billi Wilkerson.
I'm shouting out a couple of people. I'm shouting out Ann Hoy is on the line. Donna Davis is on the line, and Alicia Jackson is on the line. I mean, I'm just shouting out some folks that I appreciate, because this is their first time.
Shout them out. Let's do some shout outs while the music is going.
Yeah, this is their first time into a space with you, Nikichi. So I'm very grateful that we were able to expand it. Juliana Coy, thank you again so much. Thank you, everybody.
Rosemary and Odawa and Kathleen and Kabibi. Oh yeah, Morgan Moss. Yeah, folk in the house. Teresa. Everybody take a deep breath. About to close out the Zoom. Love you all. Take a deep breath.